Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Realise Business Expert webinar today, The Path to Permanent Profits, the Cash Flow Cash Cow. Firstly, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jacqueline and I'm the Marketing Manager at Realise Business. Realise Business is a leading social enterprise empowering people to successfully run a business. Through our Expert Talk series, we bring our members together to share their expert knowledge in the interest of helping each other to learn and grow to their highest potential. Our featured expert member is Craig Minter of Mint CD Consulting, and Craig is going to share his knowledge on the path to permanent profits with you today. But before I throw to Craig, I'm going to run through some quick housekeeping points. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box. You can bring it up on the right-hand side of the screen by pushing on the chat icon at the bottom of the screen or by pressing Alt-H. I'll bring them up during the presentation at my discretion, or otherwise we will bring them all up at the end and you can ask some more questions when we're done. So now, without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce our presenter, Craig Minter of Mint CD Consulting.
G'day everybody, and thank you for the great introduction, Jacqueline. It's always great to be talking with fellow Realise Business members today and also sharing some insights around Profit First, all things profitability, which has basically transformed my business, but also transformed many businesses worldwide. And before we get going, and to add on to what Jacqueline mentioned around the questions, also feel free to add some comments and feedback when I open it up. So throughout this presentation here today, I'll ask for a bit of input and a bit of comment and feedback. So happy for people to get involved around that as well. So now, like to get to the part where the presenter normally bores people to death with talking about themselves, but I actually prefer to let a short little video do the talking for me. So this will give you a bit of a background around me. So there you have it. And just like me being more than a consultant, you are also more than just a business owner. And I put my little inverted commas in the air as I'm sitting here. Not great for a webinar, but sometimes people think of themselves as, I'm just a business owner. But at the end of the day, you started your business for a reason. And whether it's similar to mine in creating, time for your family, a flexible lifestyle, travel, football, whatever it is, basically, the fact is that we usually all need to have a profitable business that ultimately then puts money in our pocket to make those dreams and goals a reality. And what I'm about to share here today is basically the best framework I've come across by far to make that happen and make that a reality. And before we do fire into things, just from the finances and the accounting background here, just a quick little note here that anything we talk about is sort of general guidance only. And we're going to be talking basically around Profit First being a behavioral approach to cash management to make you more profitable. But we still highly encourage people to, talk with their tax accountants and and I'll touch on that a little bit more later on as we go as well. So firing into it, the world is addicted to axioms, and you can see an ancient map like this one, but even the predecessors before this, they would have, the sea serpents and all those sorts of things around the outside of the map where, once upon a time, the world was considered to be flat. And, you'd sail off out in the horizon, never to be seen again. The sea urchins would eat you up and gobble you up and all those sorts of things. It wasn't until around 400, 500 BC that philosophy started to think, oh, hang on a second, is that the case? You know, they were sitting there and they were doing what philosophies do, drinking lots of wine, coming up with great ideas. And they proposed that the world was actually round. They saw boats going off the horizon and the mast would go down slowly over the horizon. Then at the end of the day, boats would come back up. They'd see a bit of the mast, then more of the boat. And they were looking at things like apples and bruises and rolling them around and seeing there that, hang on a second, maybe the world's actually round. But it still then took 2,000 years before it was actually proved to be correct. So people talked about it and it was sort of talked about in a sort of hushed tones. But it wasn't until 1492, Christopher Columbus sails around the world, proves the world's round, that it became generally accepted. And that's what an axiom is. It's something that is so well entrenched within society that people just take it for granted. They just accept it without any question. And, you know, it's just what it is. And what I want to talk about here today is that, you know, GAP is crap. And this is one of those generally accepted ideas. And what GAP stands for the non-accountants out there, it's actually the generally accepted accounting principles. And we're going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works of that one here today. But what we're going to talk about is the profit formula. And, you know, you all know it out there. Hopefully this time of year, we've just completed, you know, end of financial year. So you're looking at your financial reports, hopefully at least that once a year. And actually, as I talk about, this is probably a good opportunity to have the first little feedback, get involved, get interactive. Throw into the chat box there a quick little note as to how often do you look at financial reports to help you with financial decisions in the business. You know, is it annually? Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? Is it fortnightly? Is it weekly? Is it daily? Throw me a quick one-worder in there, one of those. I'd love to see people's feedback here as to how often they're looking at their financial reports to help them manage their business. Nice. They can weekly, monthly, quarterly. Yeah, doing the bash. Yeah, that's a classic time to actually be looking at your financial reports. Awesome. Weekly. Nice. Well, that's great. Keep on throwing the comments in there for those that haven't yet. But so as you're looking at those, I'll come back and touch on those a little bit later there as well. But you'll know what the profit formula is. It's, you know, sitting on the profit and loss report, we have sales, we have minus expenses, and then we have the profit. But something we might often actually find is we're sitting there going, yeah, that's wonderful. And, you know, we'll come to the end of financial year. And if you're looking at that report right now, you're sitting there saying, cool, I made profit. And this is the time when you're walking around and you're going to your accountant and you're giving them high fives and going, whoa, I made profit for the year. That's brilliant. That's great. It could be $10,000, 20, 100,000, whatever it is. You're super excited. You've made this profit. But then sometimes you start to have a little bit of think, and then you ask the question, where's the cash? So it's all great, I've made this wonderful profit, but then you go, where's the cash? And you might actually ask that of the accountant, where's the money? Where's the cash? I actually don't have that money in the bank account. And the accountant will say, hey, you know, you've already gone and spent that money. You know, you've got monies in your accounts payable, accounts receivable. You got to look at your profit and loss, your balance sheet with your cash flow statement, and the cash is actually already gone. And that's why we start to actually look at a different way of looking at things. And this is where we say there is actually a new formula. So rather than that old formula, sales minus expenses equals profit, we actually start to look at a new one. We go sales minus profit equals expenses. And while I can't see your faces out there, if we had the videos up, I'd probably start to see some quizzical looks and looking at me going, hey, here's an accountant that's starting to shapeshift, move things around. It does remind me of a little anecdote, and it's a quick little joke that I like to share sometimes to lighten the mood. And this is where three people were going for a job interview. And, you know, they got to ask one question. And the interviewer is just going to ask them all one question. The mathematician walks in and the mathematician gets asked a simple question. What's 1 + 1? And the mathematician goes, well, it's 2. Simple, straightforward, happy days. Okay, thanks for that. Out you go. Next person walks in, and it's an engineer. And the engineer gets asked the same question. What's 1 + 1? And the engineer thinks for a second, and he goes, okay, well, it's 1 + 1 equals, it's a window. Of course it's a window. And the interviewer goes, wonderful, thanks for that, awesome. The final person comes in, and it's an accountant, and gets asked the question, what's 1 + 1? And the accountant stops, has a look around, looks over his shoulder, stands up, gets out of his seat, goes over to the painting on the wall, looks behind it, then slowly walks back to the desk, sits down, leans across the table very closely and whispers, what do you want it to be? And so that's me saying, that's what some people think of accountants. Sometimes we make funny numbers, we do certain things, but just to prove that's not the case here, this is where I'll get my pen and paper out here, and I will also get asked to make sure that people can see this, that I'm actually drawing on the screen here. Can we all see this awesome little picture of me that we've got on the side of the page here? Give me a quick yes, great drawing, Craig, or something like that on the top left-hand corner. Awesome, I'm seeing that come through. That's me usually drawing my big curly hair that I had when I used to travel and the like. I no longer have that, but I fall into a habit. So I've got one yes, so I'll take it that you can all see that. And now we're going to go back to year 8 mathematics, where, the first formula here, we've got sales minus expenses equals profit. And so we're going to, take the profit and we're going to move it to the other side of the equal sign by taking across the other side. That means that we now have a minus. So that's right. And then we've also got expenses over to the other side of the equal sign. And we're taking that and we're going a minus, ultimately then equals a positive. So year 8 mathematics, who said you'd never use it again? The second formula is still perfectly mathematically correct. But what we've actually done here has a very big impact on behaviorally how we're looking at things. And in both examples, actually, I take a step back. As human beings, we're hardwired to focus what comes first. Think of, the ancient times, getting chased by a tiger. That's front of mind. It's right there. Forget everything else. The body goes into reactive mode. That's how we're hardwired. And so with respect to this formula, first, in both cases, is sales. And in business, brilliant, perfect. As a business owner, you have to have sales, you have to have revenue, you have to have cash coming in the door. Otherwise, you don't have a business. But in the first example, the next thing we focus on is expenses, and profit actually becomes an afterthought. With the second formula, we're actually upping the priority of the profit and saying, hang on a second, we're going to focus on, after we get the sales in, we're going to focus on our profit and our profitability, and expenses is going to be the afterthought. So that's all well and good from a theoretical perspective, but also how do we then actually apply it into business? And what we're actually going to do is we're going to take a leaf out of the physical fitness world and, apply it to our physical fitness in how we manage finances. And we look at, portion size. If somebody's looking to lose weight, get fit, be healthy, and all those sorts of wonderful things, one of the first things a personal trainer will often say is to, steer clear of that buffet on the left-hand side of the page, because, you're going to load your plate up, or you're going to go back multiple times, and, you're not going to be able to achieve your goals. One thing they'll often talk about is creating these small plates where, you will put whatever's on that plate and you'll only actually eat what is ever on that plate. And from a financial side of things, that's often what we talk about with bank accounts as well. If we have one big bank account, we're going to sit there and go, whatever money goes into that bank account, human nature, we're actually going to spend all that money. And the other part of the physical fitness side of the world is, as well as having the smaller plates, what we actually also do is we eat our vegetables first. We get all the nutrients into our body first so that we fill up on all that wonderful goodness stuff. And then we're less inclined to eat all those donuts and all those things that was on that previous slide. Same with business. If we're going to nourish ourselves, we need to look at our profitability, and that's what's nourishing. And that will fuel growth. It'll fuel efficiency, productivity, all those sorts of things. And that's where I start to talk bank balance accounting. And so love another comment into the chat box as we speak here. After the same questions you asked before, as far as how often do you do this, but how often do you look at your bank account to make financial decisions in your business? Is it annually, quarterly, monthly? Yeah, cool. I'm seeing it all come through. I didn't even have to say too much more. Daily. And thank you for sharing, everybody, and keep throwing in everybody else that hasn't yet. Yeah, people are looking at their bank accounts daily to help them with financial decisions. Do I have enough money to do? Oh, cool. Or, hey, I've got heaps of money. Cool, I can go and do some stuff. And that's what our human nature does. So what we actually talk about with Profit First and basically looking at a behavioral approach to manage our finances is, hey, why not try not to change who you are and have every business owner become a accounting genius who needs to know and understand the intricacies and detail of a financial report, which, you know, many people don't want to do because, you know, it's not what their skill set is and it's not what they focus on when they're starting their business. But actually, let's leverage that natural behavior to look at our bank accounts and make that actually work for us with how we're actually managing the cash flow of our business. And this is where we actually talk about multiple bank accounts to help us manage the cash flow of our business. And the Profit First methodology actually talks about 5 core accounts that you would open up to manage your business. And me, for example, I have 7 bank accounts. I know people that have more than that, and depending on the type of business, these can be different, but these 5 core accounts can help you get up and running with Profit First and managing your cash flow better, simply, and more efficiently. So let's step through those 5 accounts. First of all, we have a income account. And this is where basically all the revenue, all the cash that comes into the business goes into that one business bank account, which we call income. Then on a periodic basis, we're going to transfer money to the remaining 4 bank accounts on a percentage basis. The first one of those, as you may have guessed from the title and from what I've already touched on already, is profit. We're going to put money aside for profit. And we're going to do that before we do anything else. And I like to tell people to think about this as, you know, this is for all the guts and the glory for going out in business on your own. You've made a whole lot of an investment, whether it's a time investment, sometimes a monetary investment, maybe some debt involved, all these things to be able to create something, whether it's wealth, whether it's money, whether it's lifestyle. You've actually made an investment here. And this profit account actually becomes that return on investment. And it's just like big business, you know, your BHPs and your Telstras of the world, they put money aside for profit, and it's what we all know is dividends. It's, you know, if I'm going to invest some money and I want to grow wealth and the like, I might invest in shares. And, you know, if I'm going to put a certain amount of money in, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to put up some hard-earned cash capital, and I expect to get a return on that. And the business should be similar to that. And that's why we take profit first. The next bank account that we actually have is what we call a tax account. And, you know, this is the part where, whether we love it or hate it, and it's usually the second one of those that most people whinge, complain, we'll touch on looking at bank accounts quarterly for their BAS. We have to have money put aside to pay the tax man. Otherwise, they do have some very good data matching things. They do come after people. And unfortunately, I have seen, you know, people that have got into some bad tax trouble that they haven't been able to get out of. And it's not a pretty picture, especially when people just want to be doing all the great things they're doing in their business, but then they get tied down by tax or even put out of business as a result of it. So we need to put some money aside for that. The fourth account is owner's pay account. And this is very much distinct and separate from the profit account. So this is more for the working in the business. So as the business owner, you're likely doing hundreds and thousands of jobs within that business. And it's making sure that you're getting paid appropriately for the size of your business. And I'd hazard a guess that you know I've been there. I've had another business where I failed to pay myself or pay myself at all at one stage, and then not pay myself well. But also businesses that have, you know, multiple staff members. Quite often they're paying their staff more than themselves, even though you're doing more work than other people. You quickly become disenfranchised with your business if you're not getting paid for it. And so we need to put money aside for that. And then finally, we have the operating expenditure bank account. And this is basically the account that we need to operate our business off if we're going to have a sustainable business and be able to achieve, you know, profit objectives, owners pay, make sure that we've got tax in the bank. We actually have to operate the business off whatever's left over to make it a feasible and sustainable business. And some people go, oh, hang on a second, well, how did that, if I move all this money over to these other accounts and the like, it's, you know, how am I supposed to operate off this? And this is where innovation and creativity starts to come in. And again, another human behavior aspect of what we actually do as human beings. And I'm going to use, by way of example, a toothpaste tube. This looks similar to the wonderful toothpaste tube I've just opened up, fresh, cracked it at home this morning. Nice and big there. I wake up in the morning, I'll whack a big dollop on there, swish it around my mouth. Sometimes a bit will fall out in the sink, and it's, who cares? That's great. We've got a nice big amount of foam going around my mouth. This feels great, brilliant. Fast forward a month's time, or maybe even a bit earlier, depending on how liberal I have been, and my toothpaste tube starts to look like this is where I'm scrunching up every little skerrick I can get out of it. I'm putting my thumb into it. I'm getting my elbow in. I'm jumping on it. I'm doing whatever I can to get the last little skerrick out of this toothpaste tube. And, you know, I might be pressing out the tiniest bit of toothpaste, and I look at it and I go, yeah, that's enough. And you put it around your mouth and you go, yeah, that actually is enough. I need to be using all that I did before. And that's kind of what starts to happen with our bank accounts. If we've done an allocation and we're doing our allocations roughly on a fortnightly basis or twice a month, some businesses, we might do it weekly. But if I know I've only got X amount of money to be able to last another week, then you start to become creative. You start to look at things a little bit differently. Okay, how can I do this? And as humans, we're very good at being creative and innovative. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not innovative, I'm not creative. But if you're forced into a situation, I think about, you know, a toddler at home, it's been raining for 2 weeks inside, and you're sitting there going, oh, I'm not very creative. Next thing you know, you're coming up with the world's best game just to keep the little toddler engaged and active and out of trouble, and those sorts of things. We come up with stuff if we're under pressure to do so, and we force some pressure on ourselves to come up with things like that. And that's what we do with that operating expense bank account. The next thing we do from a profit first perspective is also, and I'll continually hear me say it over and over again, it's a behavioral approach, is we also start to remove temptation. And this is where the tax accounts and the profit accounts, what we often do is actually open up separate bank accounts again in a different financial institution. And that's what the pure profit first methodology talks about, is putting them somewhere where they're hard to get, so that, you know, you're only on a quarterly basis, you're only getting one withdrawal out of there on a quarterly basis. And it's not just easy to go, oh, I'm struggling on that operating expense line. I'm just going to take a little bit of money from there and I'll pay it back later. Because the reality is, we all know, we've all probably done it, is we don't pay it back later. And so making it that little bit harder makes us go, oh, that's a bit of a pain in the neck. I'll find a different way to get things done. Another thing we do is we implement a rhythm, and this is around, I touched on it there before, we're doing allocations from that income account out into the remaining bank accounts on a periodic basis. And this has, you know, a couple of reasons for doing that. And the first one is obviously batching things. If you're doing it every day, it starts to become a little bit too much as in administration wise. But if we're just doing it once a fortnight, once a week, we're just batching the bank transactions that we're doing, which, you know, takes a whole lot of 2 minutes to do anyway. But it starts to create that rhythm, a bit of a habit of doing it. And the second part of it is by looking at what money we're transferring, we're starting to become very conscious and aware of what the cash flow is, what the revenue lumps, ups and downs are, or what's actually going wrong. For example, you're sitting there going, hang on a second, that revenue is a little bit down this fortnight. Why is that? The activity's been there. So are we actually invoicing, or are we actually collecting? It's starting to get you on top of what's happening on that periodic basis far more consistently than what you might be doing if you're relying on going back and looking at financial reports, which, as we've seen from what people are sharing, all business owners, and it's not just people on this call, I ask that question everywhere and it's very consistent. People don't look at their financial reports. And so this is a far quicker way to be able to be on top of what's happening on a week to week and a fortnight to fortnight basis within your business. The next stage is then having a quarterly profit allocation. So that money that we are putting aside into a profit account, we're actually then distributing that money on a quarterly basis, where, you know, this is where you're paying yourself that dividend, or you're having a distribution, and we call it fun money, and it's having a celebration. You know, this is something that I love talking about when I first started with Profit First, is it's having a bit of fun money where, you know, my wife and I would regularly go on out to, I won't say regularly, but, you know, on occasion go to gold class, you know, it's a special night out, away from the kids and those sorts of things. And we do that, that's fine. But the first time I went, hey, darling, we're going to gold class next week and it's on the business. It's the profit out of the business. Just the look on her face was enough to go, yeah, that was brilliant, because it was that acknowledgement that that's for the late nights. That's for the times when, you know, I needed to prioritize work over, you know, spending time with the family on occasion. And there was that understanding of, hey, this is what it's about. It's about getting that reward and having that celebration. We can also put some money aside from this, from the profit account on a quarterly basis for some rainy day money. So we can start to build up a nice little safety net behind us there as well. And we can also use that to be able to grow the business. We can put a small amount. We always talk about making sure we have the fun money, so we definitely do that part of it. And then if we can do the other components of it, that's great as well. And usually what happens around this sort of time, people usually ask about debt. How can I take a celebration? How can I even start to put profit away if I've got debt in the business? And the reality is, I haven't come across too many businesses that don't have some form of debt, whether it's a startup debt, whether it's an ATO debt. People wonder about how do we operate this system? And we still do that system, but what we actually do is we start to have a very clear system and process for paying down debt within the business. And we still have the celebration, so we put a little bit of money aside for the celebration, but then we actually put money aside to help eliminate the debt and call it, you know, your debt destroyer. You have a process where on a quarterly basis, you're paying a chunk of money off any debt you've got. And then you can actually also, depending on how you're traveling on that operating expense bank account, you can also chip away at that if you're traveling well there. So you can have the old boxing analogy of the jab, 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 hook type of way of doing things. You can start to have a real clear process to really pay down that debt quicker than, you know, when you don't have a plan and you're just doing it ad hoc. And then also borrowing to grow. Some people say, you know, Profit First, it's this cash methodology to sustain your business. And I love to say that over time, and this is over a longer period of time, you can basically become your own bank, because you're putting money aside into growth funds, you're putting money aside for rainy days and those sorts of things. And people might say, but I need things to happen quicker than that. Can I borrow? And you say, yeah, that's fine. What Profit First and this methodology actually then gives you is a bit of a framework to understand around what's sustainable and what's achievable to be able to grow. And it's a way of doing a mini business case without having to do a full-blown, you know, 10-page document on trying to do a business case on whether to invest money in. You know, you might be looking at a new premises or a new staff member or whatever. You start to say, oh, okay, I need to invest. I need to go into debt $100,000 for an investment. Okay, then you start to wonder, well, on a percentage basis, okay, I need to make sure that I'm going to get some profit return. I need to make sure that I've got money aside for tax. I've got to be able to pay myself out of all this revenue we're going to generate off this. So, you know, if I'm looking at $100,000, am I going to get a return of $400,000 revenue because, you know, X amount of money is going to go to all these areas and I need to be able to pay the debt off the amount that's going to end up left over in the operating expenses. And so you start to have this real cool little mini business case template that you just reverse engineer these things and say, oh, yeah, I can hit that $400,000. Yeah, let's do it. Or I might struggle because, okay, it's not going to be profitable for me. So why should I actually do it in the first place? You start to have that little framework around that. And there's a quick little whirlwind tour around Profit First and what it is. And the way that I look at Profit First and the way that I use Profit First in my business and with clients' businesses as well is that it's basically a tool that we use to be able to, you know, manage that cash flow within the business and to do it in a simple, sustainable, effective way. But what I actually talk about as well is complementing that with a profit plan, which, you know, a lot of people may start a business and at different points, you might have a business plan or you might have a marketing plan, and they're great. They're really good in certain contexts, but quite often what they actually do is they're really focused in on revenue generation. And a lot of people in business, I need to make more money. I need to make more money. I want more money in my pocket. I need to pay off the tax. I need to pay off the BAS. I'm going to make it more money. I'll make more money without the thought and the forethought around actually, is it profitable to do so? We can go out and we can make more money quite easily. And a marketing plan, I can give you a marketing plan tomorrow that'll give you $1 million. Whether that actually costs you less than $1 million or more than $1 million, then that's the big question mark, isn't it? And so what I encourage people to do is to basically build a profit plan. And to do that, I talk about $1 million profit plan to do that. And here's 5 quick little steps where you can start to build your own profit plan as well. And the first step is, you know, having that step, taking that step back to, you know, at the start of the video, my personal thing is, what do I want to do in business? What do I want to achieve? Okay, I want to live a certain lifestyle. I want certain things to happen. But then also going, well, where am I right now? How much am I currently paying myself? How many hours a week am I working? All those sorts of things. But then also saying, well, what are the targets around that? And this is where you start to put in some business success metrics around that, around from a profitability point of view, from Profit First, there's some, you know, some templated guides around how much money to put aside, which I can touch on a little bit later in the conversation if you like. But also you can start to reverse engineer the income. So if you want to earn $100,000 into your pocket, $200,000 into your pocket a year from your business, what does that look like? How much revenue do you actually need to hit within your business to achieve those numbers? And then you're starting to look at that. You might be looking at industry benchmarks as well. What do other businesses in your industry actually do? And this is then where we, you know, create a roadmap where you're basically saying, well, what is the difference between these two amounts? How do I get from here to here? You're then going to actually sit there and go, let's have a very clear plan to get from where you're currently at to those targets. And that plan might be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, but you've got a clear plan to be able to do it. And then we start to implement. And this is where Profit First comes into things, as far as we start to implement and roll out Profit First. And what Profit First can actually also do is it can help you with the whole first 3 steps of this puzzle as well, where you can do an instant assessment, a profit assessment. It gives you some guides around these targets here. We've got an incremental plan, which can actually fall off the back of that roadmap phase. And the implementation phase is where we actually then go out and, you know, open up the bank accounts. We start to implement efficiency strategies. We start to do productivity measures and all those sorts of things. And then finally, you basically, the final step is monitoring and keeping yourself accountable. It's doing those distributions that I talked about and, you know, potentially paying down debt as well. It's then you're also doing a bit of a rollout plan review with your accountant, with your business partners, whoever it is, and constantly tweaking and modifying the success metrics that you're actually working towards. So overall, I know I've gone through that in a whirlwind fashion and has to fly through from profit first and profit planning. But I guess what I'd also just like to highlight is the profit first is very flexible. There are some guiding principles around, the allocations that you might do and what the success metrics are within businesses and the percentages that you'll work towards. But it can be flexible. Every business is different, and all businesses I work with, everybody has their own slightly different metrics that they might work towards, and you can tweak and modify as you go. But at the end of the day, what I highly encourage and want people to sort of take away from this is that you really need to give your money a purpose. And, every bit of money that comes into the business needs to have a purpose. Is it for business growth? Is it to pay yourself? Is it to make sure that there's money there to pay the taxman when it actually falls due? Money to pay the super? All these sorts of things. You need to have a purpose around every little bit of money that comes into your business. So next steps, as I take a breath here, is I always like to make sure people that we, present for and educate and share insights and ideas around this methodology is that you've got some takeaways. And there is a couple of very simple things that you could do today to make yourself permanently profitable. And we could get off this call right now and you can make yourself permanently profitable as soon as we get off this call. And that first step would be to open one new bank account. Open up one new bank account and call it profit. So by doing that, I would then suggest to say on every little bit of income that comes into your business on, say, a fortnightly basis, highly recommend putting 1% of that revenue into that profit bank account and just let it sit there. Let it grow. Take your time with it. Over time, you do it a couple of months and you start to see it grow and you'll start to go, hey, that's pretty cool. I got some profit there. Might not be a whole lot at first. And I know I've had people who've gone, cool, the first transfer they made was $3 and they were pumped. They were excited. And, I think when I first started as well, and after the first quarter, when I took my wife to Gold Class that I touched on there before, after the first quarter, I had $250 in that profit bank account. But what it does psychologically, you start to go, hey, I want more of that. I want more of that. I want more into that profit account. And as you're actually doing that, you're operating the business off 99% of the expenses then. And you start to go, oh, that's manageable. I can do that. So then you can start to go, oh, can I make it 2%? Can I make it 3%? And you start to build that sort of growth mindset and get excited and focus and the mind shift around focusing on that profitability. The second thing I like to do is create a profit plan. Off the back of that short little slide I provided there of the 5 steps, you can go away and do those. You can touch on a couple of questions that I raised as you step through each of those. Is what's your current lifestyle? What are the targets? Build out a little plan that's an incremental plan for you to be able to do it. And while you're focusing on that, is focusing on the profitable side of things. And then go ahead and implement the plan incrementally. We definitely, I might have a plan to run a marathon, but ultimately, and I have got that plan. I've done one in the past, but it's been a long time. If I go out and try to run a marathon tomorrow, I'm going to fail miserably. I'll injure myself and then probably moan and complain about that I'm never going to run again. And, some people do try to implement profit first and they get all excited and they start with, some of the success targets. If you're a small business, the target might be you get to 5% profit, to have 40% owners pay, 20% tax, and operating expenditures 35%. And they might start with that straight away, but because they're not operating at that level, it's too big a jump, too big a gap. They don't succeed. Then they go, throw their hands in the air and the system doesn't work. It's just the fact that you try to get there a little bit quickly. That might be a 3-year plan to get to there, depending on where your current position is. But really encourage implementing incrementally, which is where that 1% comes in as well. As a part of that process, once you're implementing, create efficiencies and innovation, as we've already talked about there before, and ultimately go ahead, scale your business and do it sustainably with a very clear methodology that is leveraging your human behavior that you're already doing, that you all shared there, that you're looking at a bank account daily and the like, versus you know, looking at your financial reports on a less frequent basis, and yeah, make it sustainable. And at the end of the day, stick with it as well. Make yourself accountable. Build a team around you that can help make things happen. You know, whether it's accountant, whether it's consultants, whether it's a business partner, whether it's your life partners, and those sorts of things. I know my wife keeps me very accountable to this. That now she wants to keep those celebrations coming on a quarterly basis, and those sorts of things. Make sure you keep yourself accountable. Just like the physical fitness world, personal trainers keep people on track. You need people with your physical fitness as well. So that comes to the end of Profit First, permanent profitability, profit plans, and the like. Here's a little gift that happy to share with anybody on this call that, you know, if they want to, the Profit First methodology is based on a book written by a guy called Mike Michalowicz. I'm able to share a couple of free chapters from that book with anybody on this call, and also I can share a handout around that $1 Million Profit Plan, that 5-step guide that has, you know, a number of trigger actions and activities for you to be able to go and implement and fire away with that plan. So more than happy to share that with anybody that would like to. Just throw it in an email to me with a profit plan in the subject line there. So that wraps it up from me. I'll hand back to Jacqueline and the team there, and yeah, feel free to fire away with any questions.
Thank you, Craig. That was a really great topic, and it's certainly one that I think we can all benefit from understanding a little bit better. So I'm now going to ask our audience to type in some questions. Just take a moment to type your questions into the chat box. I recommend we take the opportunity to quiz Craig on his knowledge as well while we have him here live. So just remember to type your questions in the chat box, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And just while we're waiting for some questions to come through, I've got a couple of questions for you myself, Craig. So I just wanted to ask, I thought maybe we'll just run into that now, and then we'll come back to the audience questions in a minute. So
yeah, cool. Fire away.
Why did Profit First resonate with you? And I guess how long have you been using it yourself in your business?
Yeah, good question. So I came across Profit First around 3 odd years ago now. I'd started reading Mike Michalowicz's books. He's got a few books out there. I'd heard on a podcast, I heard a podcast about his first book called Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, which is all about startup, small business. Then went on and went, hey, this guy's cool. Love the way he writes and the information. And basically, then started to read all these books. And so the second one, Pumpkin Plan, was brilliant for revenue, business growth. And then I came across Profit First, and I was consulting with clients at the time around efficiency, productivity, and a few things. And I'd always talk with clients around, you know, you have to get a return on investment. If you're going to employ me, you're going to pay me money, we have to get a return on investment. And so I would measure things like, you know, how much time have we saved you? How much revenue is coming in the door? And we put measure around it. And so when I read Profit First, I went, hey, this really makes sense. It's logical. I've got an accounting background and I can look at the financial reports and all the rest of it, but I'm like everybody on the call here. I still look at my bank accounts every day and all the rest of it. I'm like, it just makes more sense to do this. But then also tying it in with my consulting, I was like, hang on a second, this is a real way that I can measure what I do with clients in dollars in the bank. And so, yeah, I started implementing basically straight away. So basically 2.5 to 3 years ago, I started implementing my business, saw the results that it had on me. And basically then I became a Profit First professional, sort of affiliated with the Profit First brand, and started working with clients on it about two years ago.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I guess following on from that, what are the benefits you've seen for you and your clients in using that methodology?
Yeah, benefits. Well, where do I stop? I guess, yeah, well, probably I surveyed my clients at one point. It's probably their responses were probably quite symptomatic of what I experienced myself as well. But I actually asked them to say, hey, in one word, what's profit first sort of mean to you and your business and those sorts of things. And it was, they came back with, every single person came back with simplify or simplicity. No, it wasn't simplistic, sorry, simplify or simple methodology. And so it was just that thing of just simplifying things and simplifying cash flow for businesses. And then sort of 80% of each of the respondents then came back with these following two, which was sort of a form of financial control and financial freedom, whereby, you know, people just had more of a sense that they knew what was going on, and it was enabling them to, you know, lift the weight off their shoulders. And quite often, you know, and I was in this space as well, there's sort of two types of people that often resonate with profit first, and I've in both of these places at different points. It's, you know, wanting to grow the business that it's sort of stalled a little bit or is growing, but growing in revenue terms, but not paying me more in my pocket. I was getting more cash in my pocket. And so this gave a real clear process and way to be able to do that. And that's sort of how that kind of operates from that perspective. And the other one is, I guess, around debt and the ATO. And a lot of people, you know, getting to the end of the quarter and going, oh, how am I going to pay this bill? And you're looking for new revenue to pay old debts, basically. And so, you know, it's very much the benefit of, hey, there's money in the bank, and the bank comes around and it's like, hey, cool, that money's there, and it just goes. There's actually no pressure and no stress. So they're probably the two big benefits I've seen, that extra cash in the pocket as your business grows, and covering off the debt, and especially the ATO pressure that sometimes many businesses follow. That I know I've been there myself.
Wonderful. We've got quite a few questions that have come flooding in now, Craig. So we've got a question from Ben, and Ben wanted to know, is the 1% profit from the total revenue?
Yes, I'd say start there. Yes, when you start to delve into a little bit of the deeper machinations of profit first, depending on your type of business and the like, you may look to do that after. So I'll use, probably, as I'm talking around this, a builder, for example. So a builder, you know, they get a lot of revenue in, a total revenue, but they do actually pay a chunk of that usually straight out for subcontractors. You know, the plumber's got to come in, and, you know, the plasterers and all those sorts of people. So if there's a business that's high in, I guess, materials, cost of goods sold, or subcontractors, it would usually be after they've taken out of the equation. But for the 1%, just to get started, I would say just start with that 1% on the total revenue. Yes.
Cool. And I've got a question here from Belinda. Belinda wanted to know if there's any bank accounts you'd recommend from a business perspective, bearing in mind that 5 accounts might equal 5 fees. So she likes the idea of it, but she only has 2 accounts.
Yeah, cool. A very common question, Belinda. Yeah, so for example, I've got the 7 bank accounts that I touched on before with my bank. I currently pay $1.60 in bank fees across all of my accounts. So that's $1.60 per month coming out of my bank account, and that's for my card. And so there are options out there, and that was, to be honest, that was 3 years ago, before I knew that there were even other options available. So there are a number of banks that do have fee-free business accounts. There is a resource that I can share on a list of them, but off the top of my head, I've got clients that are with all different types of banks, and so I usually recommend, you know, having a talk with your current bank to see what is possible and what's available to be able to do that. But I do know the NAB, Bankwest have fee-free accounts. There's a number of other banks that have, you know, reduced amounts, and what you generally tend to find is that many bank setups, you can generally have multiple tax type of accounts, whereby, and that's what I've kind of done with mine. They're kind of like multiple tax type of accounts, but there's just limited transactions you can have from that account. And so they might only allow you to have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 transactions per month going into or out of those tax accounts, which is fine, because basically the The operating expense and the revenue account are sort of two accounts that have generally lots of transactions, and the remaining accounts are usually, money goes into them once or twice, up to 4 times per month. But usually I do recommend doing fortnightly returns. So they're usually getting 2 amounts of money going in there per month, and then maybe depending on whether you're on a monthly GST and those sorts of things. You can sort of work things around that.
So we have a few questions from Karen, and Karen, thank you for those questions. I think I'll address a couple of them, and then I might get Craig to come back to you offline as well, because I think that he'll be able to help you a bit more with those. But Karen's interested to know what percentage you recommend as a split for tax to be safe. How much would you recommend percentage-wise she should put away?
Yeah, so again, this is probably one area of very tailored and specific questions on individual businesses. But if you grab the book and you grab some of the resources around the book, they talk in the book around 15% being the target tax percentage. I do put a caveat and note around that that is a US book, so it's written in the US for a US tax system. I usually start with clients at 20%, and that's the conservative accountant in me. But I also do factor in, this is again stepping the level below, I guess, what we've gone through in the presentation here. The tax account's easy to talk about as a tax account, but I consider it more of a government obligations account, where it's, factors in your end of year annual tax, PAYG potentially, if you've got staff within the business, superannuation, and those types of things as well. So I generally target to get to 20%, and then you can tweak and modify once you're actually in the nuts and bolts and running of it. You start to find where your equilibrium sits, depending on your business type, how your structures are. And again, this is very much a conversation I generally work through with people's tax accountants as well. So I don't do personally tax advice, tax accounting and the like. I could do it, but that's not my area of expertise and speciality. I prefer to sit and play in this profit first world. And I always talk about, making sure you've got a great tax accountant there that we can always talk with them to tweak and modify depending on your circumstances. But if you aim at 20, that's usually worked fairly well for most of my businesses that I work with at this point.
Great. And I think, Karen, just one more for Karen. Also, how much would you recommend, a percentage-wise, how much money would you take out for fun?
Yeah, so again, target percentages, and this very much depends on the size of your business. I sort of alluded to it briefly in the comment. If you're a small business, probably earning up until $250,000 in revenue, you'd be looking to put away the 5% would be your profit target, and you'd go upwards from there. So if you're getting a little bit bigger than that, you're sort of in that next bracket, up to 500,000, up to $1 million in turnover. You might be looking at 10 to 15%. And then as you're getting bigger and bigger from there, again, you're kind of looking at, the 15, 20% at probably the most. But sort of what generally happens is, as the business grows and the business scales, you start to incrementally increase the profit percentage that you're targeting, but you would actually start to reduce the owner's pay percentages. You still end up with more dollars in your pocket as a result, but where it sits equates to doing more work on the business rather than in the business. And I guess talking fun money, the other, caveat of that is, hey, put aside, let's just talk small business because it's easier, the 5%. You're putting that 5% aside is, if you do have debt in the business, is then, well, hey, say you've got, $10,000 sitting in the bank, is on a quarterly basis, would actually take a small percentage of that, 5 to 10% of it to go and do the fun thing, go for the nice dinner, have a holiday, whatever it is, depending on the size of it. But then we would use the remaining chunk of that to pay down debt as well. So it does depend on personal circumstances, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a guide there, Karen.
So I think Pam, similarly, I think you might have already answered this mostly, Craig, but Pam was also wanting to know what the average profit percentage goal would be. And I guess you kind of said that it might, that goal might change depending on your income. Would that be right?
Yeah, it changes depending on the size and size in the industry to an extent as well. And just note that when I'm talking profit and I'm talking that sort of thing as well, this is very much talking about the cash profit that's moving in and around the business. That may not represent and equate to, you know, a net profit percentage or gross profit percentage when you're looking at financial reports. If people are starting to look at that side of things, or, you know, a margin that you might be charging on, so that's very different from the actual cash coming into the business and where you're putting that cash profit. And so, yeah, things like the margin that you're charging on top of any goods or services and those sorts of things, just probably want to clarify that is separate from that. But yes, it does start at that 5% and sort of moves to the 10 to 15% generally is where most businesses sit.
Thank you, Craig. So that's probably all we've got time for today in regards to questions. Anyone else that had a question come through, we'll certainly come back to you offline, and I'll send them through to Craig, and we'll send them back on our response, where we will also include the link to the webinar. So when we thank you for joining, we'll include the link so you can rewatch this webinar, especially if you came in late, and we'll also give you some answers to the questions that we might have missed. So thank you so much for spending that time with us today, Craig.
Cool.
And I hope everyone, thanks, Craig, and I hope everyone got a lot out of it as well. So just a couple of things. First of all, thank you all for joining. Our expert talks are a membership exclusive at Realise Business, and the recorded webinars, which you've heard today, are held on our Knowledge and Resources Hub, which is available to Realise Business members exclusively. So we have some great webinars already saved on topics like crafting content for your business, SEO for small businesses, Instagram and Facebook for business, that's just to name a few. So if you're interested in becoming a member with Realise, visit our website, which is www.realise.business, or give us a call at our head office on 029 545 5900. And then also just coming up this month, we've got 3 great networking events scheduled, so you can meet and network with other small business owners. So we've got Cronulla Pub Biz on the 5th of July from 4 till 6 p.m. We've got Surrey Hills Pub Biz on the 10th of July from 5 till 7 p.m. and Manly Pub Biz on the 18th of July from 5 till 7 p.m. And you can find out more details or register for any of those by visiting our website, www.realise.business. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Craig. Is there anything else that you wanted to add as we're saying goodbye?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I should say happy to answer any questions off the back that we didn't get to on the call, but it's been a pleasure, and I hope people have got some good insights out of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Craig. And just keep an eye out for the email, which will come from Courtney, sending you out the link to rewatch today's presentation, and we'll also have answers to your questions that will probably come through tomorrow. But thank you again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our expert talk, and hopefully we'll see you again at next month's talk, which will be in early August, and we'll give you details as soon as we've got them secured. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Craig, and thank you, members.